So, think about your car for a second.
Yeah.
If your engine oil turns into like this corrosive sludge, your dashboard is going to light up like a Christmas tree.
Oh, absolutely. It practically screams at you to pull over.
Yeah, exactly. But when your own, psychological engine starts to fail, when your mental resilience wears paper thin, your brain's dashboard is often, well, just entirely silent. We just keep pushing the pedal down.
We really do. The warning lights for our inner lives are incredibly subtle, and honestly, we condition ourselves to just completely ignore them.
Yeah, we really do.
I mean, we'll spend a whole weekend meticulously rotating the tires on the machine in our garage, right? But we'll completely neglect the complex machinery inside our own heads until we're, broken down on the side of the road.
Right. And that tension is exactly what we're unpacking today. We've got our hands on this really fascinating transcript. It's from a speech given at a sacrament meeting, which is a worship service in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
It is.
And just to be crystal clear with you listening right now, our mission today isn't to, take sides or endorse a specific religious theology. That's not what this is. We're putting this material under a psychological microscope to impartially report on and unpack the mental models the speaker outlines.
Right, the maintenance strategies for inner health.
Exactly. Because the architecture of this framework, they call it a spiritual health promotion program, is incredibly robust, honestly, regardless of your personal background.
It truly is. The speaker builds this entire framework around the idea that our inner lives require, deliberate, systematic maintenance. And instead of just some rigid list of rules, they present a dynamic system that actually aligns beautifully with modern cognitive behavioral science.
Which is so cool. Okay, let's unpack this opening metaphor they use.
Yeah.
Because we can look at this system in 3 distinct phases, right? Calibration, navigation, and fortification.
Right, so starting with calibration.
Yeah, the very first step the speaker emphasizes is fixing your internal communication system. They talk about personal revelation, which is receiving spiritual guidance, but they frame it as this highly active, almost sweaty process.
Yes. Quoting their church leader, President Nelson, they actually call it a workout for your spiritual muscles.
Workout, not a spa day.
Exactly. It requires tuning a frequency, kind of like a radio dial. You aren't just, sitting in a chair passively waiting for an email from heaven to just drop into your inbox.
Right. You have to be active. And the transcript shares this very specific anecdote from a church publication called the Liahona to illustrate this. There's a commuter, right, riding on a bus, just staring out the window.
As you do on a commute.
As you do. And suddenly they get this distinct, brief thought. Just contact this specific person. Now, the crucial part is what happens next. They didn't just passively acknowledge it or go, weird. They immediately wrote it down, followed through, and were supposedly greatly blessed for it.
And the speaker explicitly warns that failing to act on those prompts is like ignoring a radio weather report about an incoming storm.
Yeah. And you know what that mechanism reminds me of? Modern social media algorithms.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, think about it for you, the listener. If TikTok or Instagram shows you a video about, say, amateur woodworking, and you just scroll right past it without liking or engaging, the algorithm registers that lack of action.
Right. It assumes you don't care.
Exactly. It says, okay, they don't care about woodworking, and it just stops serving you that content. The speaker is essentially arguing that your intuitive or, spiritual algorithm works the exact same way. If you don't click on the prompt by actually taking action, the universe just stops serving you the signal.
That is a perfect analogy because it actually describes a real neurological mechanism. It's called the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
The RAS, okay.
Yeah, your brain processes, literally millions of bits of information every single second. But your RAS acts as a bouncer. It only lets the stuff you've deemed important into your conscious awareness.
Wow, so it filters everything else out.
Precisely. So when you have a sudden insight or intuition and you act on it, by writing it down or making that phone call, you are literally training your RAS to flag those subtle internal signals as high priority in the future.
And if you ignore them?
If you ignore them, you prune those neural pathways. You essentially teach your brain to filter out its own wisdom.
You are actively turning the volume down on your own intuition. That is wild.
It is.
Which brings us to the second part of this internal calibration. The speaker tackles the concept of repentance, but they completely upend how we typically conceptualize that word.
They do. It's a huge shift.
Right. Instead of a depressing checklist of bad habits you need to stop doing, they frame it as and this is a quote, wardrobe change of the heart.
which is a brilliant application of identity-based behavioral change. In psychology, we know that avoidance goals, like trying not to do something, are incredibly prone to failure.
Like trying not to eat junk food.
Right. If your goal is I will stop being angry, your brain is still constantly focused on the concept of anger.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're still thinking about the anger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the speaker shifts this to an approach goal. They describe taking off an old nature and putting on the clothes of a Christ-like nature. It's this positive identity shift that changes how you love, think, manage time, and even treat your body.
So it's bigger than just habits.
Much bigger.
Yeah.
You aren't just tweaking your behavior. You are adopting the persona of someone who fundamentally operates differently.
I hear that, but I had to push back a little bit on the practicality of it. Because checking off a to-do list of bad habits, like I will stop drinking 3 sodas a day, that feels manageable, right? But telling someone, especially someone listening right now who might already be burnt out, to completely change their fundamental nature and undergo an entire identity overhaul, isn't that a recipe for massive overwhelm?
I mean, it definitely would be if they handed you a map.
A map.
Yeah, but the speaker introduces a completely different navigational tool to handle this shift. They talk about covenants, which are sacred promises in their faith acting as a compass.
Okay, and what is the psychological advantage of a compass over a map?
Well, think about a map. A map is rigid. It gives you turn-by-turn directions. If a bridge is washed out or, if you make one wrong turn, a map immediately makes you feel lost and paralyzed.
Because you're suddenly off the path?
Exactly. It demands perfection. A compass, however, acknowledges that the terrain is going to be unpredictable and messy. You might have to walk 3 miles around a mountain or detour through a dense forest.
But the needle still points north.
Right. As long as that needle is pointing toward your chosen center, which the speaker defines as keeping Christ at the center, you have this continuous recentering mechanism. It builds psychological flexibility. It's about maintaining your direction, not achieving immediate perfection.
I love that distinction.
Yeah.
A compass allows for the messy reality of being human. Because once you have your internal radio tuned and your compass set, you still have to, open your front door and deal with the real world.
You do. You have to actually navigate.
Right. And that transitions us into the speaker's next major concept, which is about how to actually look at the world around you. They call it seeing truth with 2 eyes.
Which is a great visual,
Right.
because closing one eye destroys your depth perception.
Oh, totally. You can't catch a ball with one eye closed.
Exactly. And the speaker argues that looking with 2 eyes provides both the immediate depth of your current situation and the big picture overarching context of what they call the Lord's will. You need the granular details of the moment, but you must synthesize them with your long-term values.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. What really caught my attention in this section was the speaker's highly practical advice for what to do when things go totally quiet.
Ah, yes. The silent moments.
Yeah. They explicitly acknowledge that sometimes heaven is silent, you don't get the prompt on the bus, your intuition just goes blank. And in those moments, the default human response is usually to just freeze.
Well, ambiguity spikes our anxiety, which leads straight to analysis paralysis. We wait for absolute certainty or like a burning bush before making a move, and we end up just stagnating.
Exactly. But the speaker says you shouldn't just park the car. I like to think of it like driving in thick fog. If you're driving through a long tunnel or dense fog and you lose your GPS signal, you don't slam on the brakes in the middle of the dark road.
That would be incredibly dangerous.
Right. You use your momentum and your last known trajectory to keep moving forward. The speaker advises making a decision you think aligns with your values, moving forward in faith, and trusting that the effort itself is seen and valued even without immediate feedback.
And doing that fosters what we call an internal locus of control.
An internal locus of control.
Yeah, you are no longer a victim of circumstances just waiting to be saved. You become an active participant in your own progression. And crucially, the speaker doesn't want you driving through that fog alone.
No, they don't.
This is where the framework shifts from individual maintenance to communal navigation. They introduce the concept of building Zion, which is their term for a society defined by profound unity and love.
They talk about ministering or serving others, but they frame it in a way that feels highly transactional, but like in a good way. They say that when you serve someone else, you aren't just helping them out. You are literally warming up your own spiritual engine.
Right.
It's the transition from the world's default give-and-take mentality to what they call a give-and-give economy.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, like the actual neuroscience of altruism, this is a profound biological truth.
Wait, really? The biology backs this up.
Completely. When we are stressed or feeling lost in our own metaphorical fog, our brain defaults to a network called the default mode network, or DMN.
DMM.
An overactive DMN is heavily linked to rumination, anxiety, and depression. We basically get trapped in a loop of our own problems.
I've definitely been there. So how does helping my neighbor fix my own DMN loop?
By forcing your brain to focus outward on the needs of another person, you physically interrupt that rumination circuit. You break the loop. Furthermore, acts of service trigger the release of oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, and dopamine.
So you feel better literally.
Literally. You are downregulating your own stress response and rewiring your brain's reward centers. The speaker points out that the goal is to make the community a cozy home with warm welcomes. Building a cozy home for someone else is one of the most effective, scientifically backed methods for building personal resilience.
That is amazing. And the text actually contrasts this with the biblical story of the rich young ruler who walks away sad because he couldn't bring himself to sacrifice his comfortable life.
Right, he chose the comfort.
Yeah, and the speaker is driving home the point that sacrificing your own time and comfort is the exact mechanism that generates the power to create that unity. You literally warm up your own engine by giving someone else a jumpstart.
Comfort is often the enemy of resilience. The rich young ruler maintained his wealth, but he sacrificed his capacity for deeper connection and growth.
Okay, so altruism is essentially a neurochemical hack for resilience. I love that. But let's be totally real with you, the listener, for a second. Let's look at the practical Tuesday night reality of this.
The messy reality.
Yes, you can have your compass set, you can be moving forward in the fog, you can be helping your neighbors and releasing all that oxytocin. But at 8 p.m. when the kids are screaming or your boss just sent a passive-aggressive email, you are still going to face personal pitfalls.
Absolutely. The road is still bumpy.
You're still going to be tempted to just sit on the couch, waste time, and harbor intensely critical thoughts about everyone around you.
Because high-level ideals eventually collide with physiological reality. And the speaker clearly understands this because they do not end their framework with lofty ideals about Zion.
No, they don't.
The final point is pure tactical fortification. They introduce the concept of the pre-planned action notebook.
This is, honestly, my absolute favorite part of the entire transcript. It is so grounded. The speaker uses the metaphor of a fire alarm. You do not wait until the kitchen curtains are engulfed in flames to sit down at the table and draw a floor plan for your escape route.
Because by the time the fire is raging, the panic overrides your logic entirely.
Right.
The speaker challenges the audience to proactively identify their top 3 temptations, and they don't list massive, dramatic sins either.
No, the examples from the source are incredibly relatable. It's things like wasting time when you are tired or harboring critical thoughts about other people.
Exactly. And once you identify your specific vulnerabilities, you create an action notebook or a playbook, exactly the way a professional athlete would prepare for a game.
So what does this all mean for us? It's basically meal prepping your morality. Think about it. If you wait until 7 p.m., you're starving, you just got home from a brutal day, and you open the fridge to decide what's for dinner. You're going to eat a sleeve of cookies.
Without a doubt.
You are in a weakened state. But if you meal prepped on Sunday afternoon when you had high energy and clear focus, your response to being hungry on Tuesday is already decided. You just pull the container out of the fridge. The decision is made.
That's spot on. The scientific term for that weakened state is decision fatigue, which stems from ego depletion.
Ego depletion.
Yeah. Throughout the day, every choice you make drains the glucose and the cognitive resources in your prefrontal cortex, the logical, forward-thinking part of your brain. By 8 p.m., your prefrontal cortex is effectively offline.
It's done.
If you rely on willpower in that moment to fight off the temptation to doom scroll for 3 hours, you will lose.
Because the battery's dead.
Exactly. The action notebook bypasses the depleted prefrontal cortex entirely. It relies on preloaded protocols. When the trigger happens, say, you feel the urge to harbor a critical thought, you don't have to debate whether or not to engage with it.
You just follow the plan.
Right. Your playbook already dictates an automatic alternative behavior. The speaker notes that with practice, this response becomes almost intuitive.
But here's where I found myself pausing while reading the source material.
Wow.
Yeah. The speaker warns against using the excuse, well, this is just my nature. They advise praying for the gift to remove flaws, treating these deep-seated habits as things that can be trained away through spiritual discipline.
Right.
I have to ask, though, is it really psychologically healthy to just try to remove flaws intuitively?
Mm.
Aren't we sometimes just suppressing things? Like, if my flaw is a quick temper and my playbook just says, don't be angry, am I not just stuffing that emotion down and pretending everything is fine until the pressure builds and I explode?
This raises an important question, and it's a crucial distinction to make between suppression and discipline.
Okay, unpack that for me.
If we look closely at the mechanics of what the speaker is advocating, they are not suggesting you just swallow the anger and pretend it doesn't exist. They are advocating for an athletic mindset. A professional golfer doesn't suppress a bad habit in their swing.
With daily practice and new swing.
Exactly. They intentionally overwrite it with a better, highly practiced movement.
They replace the neural pathway.
Yes. Suppression is passive resistance, which takes a massive amount of energy and eventually fails. Discipline, in the context of this action notebook, is active replacement.
Active replacement.
You're not just telling yourself, don't be angry. Your playbook says, when I feel a physical sensation of anger rising, I will immediately take 3 deep breaths and step into another room. You are starving the flaw of the opportunity to manifest by initiating an automatic alternative behavior.
Wow.
It allows your highest values to take the wheel exactly when your willpower is at its lowest.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. You aren't pretending the kitchen won't ever catch fire. You're just making sure your legs know exactly which way to run without your brain having to do the math in the middle of the smoke.
Precisely. You are eliminating the friction between the temptation and the correct choice.
All right, let's take a step back and look at the whole dashboard we've reconstructed today for you. We've explored a massive, comprehensive vehicle inspection for the inner life. We started with calibration, actively tuning the radio dial of your intuition so you don't prune your own neural pathways, and embracing a wardrobe change that focuses on positive identity shifts rather than negative checklists.
We then moved into navigation, using your values as a compass to allow for flexibility, seeing with 2 eyes to maintain both depth and context, and having the courage to rely on dead reckoning through the fog when the GPS signal drops.
And we looked at the profound biological hack of the give and give economy, how building a cozy home for others downregulates your own stress and pulls you out of that DMN rumination loop.
And finally, we covered fortification, acknowledging your vulnerabilities and creating that athletic action playbook to bypass decision fatigue and overwrite your defaults.
It really is a masterclass in internal maintenance.
Yeah.
And listener, this is where the rubber meets the road for you. Regardless of your personal beliefs, the mechanics of this framework are universally applicable.
They really are. And I want you to think about that final fortification step today. What are your top 3 daily distractions or temptations? What usually trips you up at 8 p.m. when your prefrontal cortex is totally depleted?
When the battery's dead.
Exactly. Do you have a preloaded escape route, or are you going to rely on willpower when the kitchen is already on fire? The ultimate goal here, as the speaker beautifully laid out, is to commit to a healthier inner life. Don't let the engine run dry just because the warning lights are quiet.
It is about taking back agency over your own psychological machinery. Pick one area we discussed today, whether it's tuning the dial, checking the compass, or writing the playbook, and just do the maintenance.
I love that. Pick one thing.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought. To mull over something that builds on the speaker's advice, but takes it in a slightly different direction.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Well, the speaker talked about seeking the gift to completely remove flaws, specifically highlighting the tendency to have critical thoughts. But it makes me wonder, what if some of the things we consider our biggest, most annoying flaws are actually just raw, misplaced strengths?
Oh, how do you mean?
Take those critical thoughts, for example. A critical thinker is someone who inherently notices when things are wrong. They see the cracks in the foundation that everyone else ignores.
Right.
That can be incredibly annoying to deal with, sure, but it's also highly valuable. If you use your playbook to completely remove that inner critic, do you also risk destroying your discerning eye?
That's a fascinating point.
It makes you wonder, how do we balance the desire to ruthlessly eliminate a flaw versus doing the hard work of recalibrating a misunderstood strength? Maybe true internal maintenance isn't always about tossing out the broken parts. Sometimes it's realizing those parts just need to be pointed in a different direction. Think about that the next time you pop the hood on your own mind.